Go along with these potato, corn, and basil croquettes from the previous video, we're going to do a pork tenderloin, just seasoned with a dry rub, and then some pickled peaches. Peach season is coming up. This is a great way to use peaches, of course, and preserve them for the fall and winter. But this is a particularly good recipe if you have peaches that aren't quite ripe and ready just to eat out of your hand. Pickling them makes the best of underripe fruit. So I just have some early season peaches, and we're just going to do a simple brine of apple cider vinegar, sugar, salt, a little bit of water, and then my seasoning of choice or flavoring of choice to go along with the peaches. Great flavoring combinations for peaches, but also if you are going to serve these with meat, these go well with sort of quote unquote barbecue flavors. So I'm going to use some whole star anise as well as some whole clove. And this is really quite simple to put together. All your ingredients go into one pot. We're going to slice the peaches up and then pour the hot brine over top. Leave them, best case scenario, 3 or 4 days to really sit in the fridge, but we're going to do this in real time. Bring the brine together just in a medium-sized pot. I'm going in with what I have here, 5 whole star anise, and just like a small, I don't know, what we'll call it, a teaspoon of clove. Clove can be very overpowering, so bear that in mind. And sugar. And I'm going with apple cider vinegar. You can use regular pickling vinegar if you want, but I just like the little bit of extra sweetness that this adds. So I'm doing about equal parts vinegar to sugar. And then I'm going to double up on the water. And then we need a touch of salt in here. Just a pinch, not too much, because we are pickling something sweet. This is just going to go over the flame, about medium, high flame, just for like 3 or 4 minutes. You're just looking for it to come to a low simmer and for all of the sugar to dissolve. And onto the peaches. I'm going to probably cut these peaches into 8s. I don't want like really big chunks of peach. Now, because these are underripe, when I go to twist them, there's probably going to be a bit of a struggle to get them away from the pit, or not that difficult, I suppose. It's all going to depend on how ripe or underripe they are. And we'll just flick the pit out. And like I said, I'm just going to do each peach into 8s. So each half into quarters. And then you can just set these aside while we wait for our pickling brine to finish up. Our brine has come to a nice simmer and it's nice and clear now. The sugar has dissolved. Towel here. And all of our peaches are ready. I'm just going to transfer these into a bowl for now. Like I said, you really want to give these at least sort of 48 hours under the brine, but you can prepare a sterilized jar as well, and you can put your peaches, pour your brine over the top, make sure there's no air, just sort of poke it with a chopstick or a skewer to get all the air bubbles out, and then you can can this just about 20 to 22 minutes in boiling water, and then leave it overnight until your cap pops. Is that right? Cap pops? Yes, cap pops. And you can keep it in the fridge, or if you've done the proper canning, you can just put it up in the larder until you're ready to use it. Peaches in the bowl. Carefully pour your brine over top so you don't splash yourself. And this is just enough brine to cover. These were 4 peaches that I used. So I'm just going to make sure that each peach is submerged. And if you wanted to, you could put a small plate on top just to make sure all the peaches stay underneath. To go along with our pickled peaches, I'm just going to do a simple pork tenderloin. Any cut of meat is great to serve with pickled fruit, and I really learned about the combination of pickled fruit and meats living in Italy, specifically in Lombardia. I lived with a family in Cremona, which is famous for their mostarda, which is a very like pickled and spicy, syrupy, preserved fruit, and it's often served with meat, particularly served with pork. So this is a little bit of my spin on this, but also in a lot of Southern Americana food, you'll see pickled fruit, peaches, watermelon, etc., done with barbecued meat. So again, kind of a spin on that as well. So I've already cleaned this piece of pork tenderloin. The only real issue that you have to look out for with pork tenderloin, sometimes there's a little bit of sinew on it, which you just want to cut away. But really the issue becomes that it's thicker at one end than it is at the other. So you have to bear that in mind when you're cooking it. I like my pork just slightly pink on the inside, which I know is not for everybody. So cook meat according to how you like. But I tend to just reserve this little end that always gets a little bit overcooked as sort of the cook's treat. You can have free will with what you want to do here. I'm going with some smoked paprika, cumin, which is a must for me. I've got some allspice here. There's a touch of clove in here, not too much. Really, I just put the clove in to kind of echo the pickled peaches, pepper, and lots of salt. All right, I'm just going to take a little bit of just regular olive oil, and I'm going to put a little bit in my pan. We're going to sear this off first and then finish it in a high 400-degree oven. Pork tenderloin does not take very long to cook. It's not one of those things where you just sort of slow cook it and forget about it. You need to kind of pay attention to it. So I'm just going to take our dry rub here and spread it all over, kind of pushing it in. And then, of course, don't forget to flip it over and do the other side. I'm going to put this pan on the oven over high flame. I want to get this very, very hot. However, I don't want the oil to start smoking. So if your oil starts smoking, you've taken a little bit too far and you want to pull the pan off and just let it cool down a bit. But we do want this hot so we get a very nice sear on the meat. Pork tenderloin doesn't have a lot of fat on it. I did leave a little bit on this piece, but it's naturally just a leaner cut of meat. So there's not a lot of fat there to actually create too much of a crust. So that's why we're using a little bit of olive oil and of course the dry rub. And the sugar in the dry rub is what will caramelize. So let's get this pan very hot. All right, the pork loin is finished. Now we're just going to let this rest for 5 minutes or so. And there is a little bit of juice in the bottom of this pan, so don't get rid of that quite yet. Just put that to the side, and we're going to let this rest. And we made the peaches about 2 hours ago, even though this is all part of the same video. So we're going to add peaches to the service of this just so you can see it all together. And then we're going to put the rest of the peaches in a jar, can them, and then keep them in the fridge. Okay. So we've just put the excess peaches into a sterilized jar, and I'm just taking a skewer and I just want to knock out any air bubbles that might be in here. And I just had a thought, if you wanted to, some basil leaves in here. Peaches and basil go really well together. So if you wanted to put some fresh basil leaves in here as well, clean, washed fresh basil leaves, and then lid on. And I'm just going to put this in the fridge because I'll use this within a week. But like I said, if you want to can it, make sure it goes into a rolling boil pot of water, 20 to 22 minutes. Make sure the water is over top of your lid. It can't just come up to the lid. It has to be over top of the lid. But for now, I'm going to let this sit in the fridge for at least 3 or 4 days, and then I'll start eating it throughout the week. Let's plate this up. Some of this gorgeous, juicy pork. This flavorful crust on the outside. And then some of the pickled peaches in and around. And like I said, this would be perfect to serve with the potato, basil, and sweet corn croquettes from the video just before this one. And I want to take some of the brining syrup and just put it over the meat. And then for the little bit of fond, or the crusty bits, and the little bit of fat that was left in the pan here, I'm just going to take a little bit of the brine just to loosen it off the pan. All those sticky bits are delicious. And then pour this over the pork. And then a little bit of sweet basil, just for some green. And again, peaches and basil really like each other. Go. Little pinch of pepper to finish. And that is a perfect little summer dish. Roast pork loin with pickled peaches. Let's get in here. Little piece of pork, little piece of pickled peach. It's so good. Everything's there. Smoky, a little bit of spice. There's all these great, like, earthy, like from the star anise, sort of sweet, earthy. The clove is giving it a little bit of lift, and then all the vibrancy from the vinegar. Even just after 2 hours, this is good. Imagine the pickled peaches after a week. Any cut of meat. But pork tenderloin, it takes 15 minutes. Not even 15 minutes to make pork tenderloin. Cook it till it's just pink. Don't be afraid of a little tiny bit of pink pork, especially these lean cuts. They need to stay moist. So good.